Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi, welcome to episode 5. Of the story behind Connecting Trains, and so 2 weeks ago we talked about Niels, last week we talked about Steve Payne, and this week we're going to talk about Penny Stock. And she is fundamental to the team purely because we live now in a digital age and she is the tech. She's the one where her laptop is, almost an extension of our hands, and she can do all the tech. She can do all of the computer analysis, all the data. She's the one that can access all the different systems, get all the information that they need, and she's fundamentally important to the team. With Goodwin, he's not a technophobe, but he's definitely old school, writes lists, and he's not got it on his phone yet or anything like that. That is where slightly there's a lot of yours truly in Goodwin. That is not one of the things I am more aligned with Penny on the IT technical side. I've worked in IT my whole life, and quite often on sort of bleeding edge, and so I did also certify as an ethical hacker. White hat, no black hat here. So I am quite technical. I definitely understand the IT side of things, but I'm also surrounded by and know a lot of people who are not. Obviously the people that I work with developers, they do understand the technical, even just the simple settings on your phone or on your laptop or your computer, etc. I'm wholly comfortable with that, but most of the people around me that I don't work with aren't. So I do understand how valuable Penny is. Not necessarily does the rest of the team. Goodwin does, because she does what he can't, which is, again, as I explained in my blog the other week, the team, he has to have a team to work in the UK, and the team in the UK, I wanted to have characters and traits and skill sets that complement and contrast with Goodwin's own, because he can't do it all himself, and he needs to be able to use the people around him to do that. So again, at the beginning where we talked yesterday about last week about pain, I'm going to read the bit I'll just read the beginning again. Bowman had provided him with a list of detective sergeants and detective constables that would be working for him as the senior investigating officer on this case. He had recognised 3 out of the 8 names he'd been given. The first was Paul Neal's, which we did 2 weeks ago in episode 3. The next was Steve Payne, which we did last week in episode 4. And so now I'll read the third person that he recognised. The final name he had recognised had been Penny Stock. He had worked with her before, and she could find patterns in anything. She used her analytical and mathematical skills, as well as, what seemed to Goodwin, incredible computer skills to find patterns and series in anything. She was an analytical genius, but her imagination let her down at times. She needed the input from the rest of the team to give her the ideas of where to start looking, and then she could punch it all into her computer and give those in the team with the investigative skills the starting points of where to focus their attention. So straight away there, I'm highlighting how she can't do it all on her own. I really wanted in Connecting Trains, and I'm continuing now in Lethal Leith Hill, to get across a team. When Goodwin is abroad, that is him, and he calls on the odd things that he might need to help him, because he's a fish out of water there anyway, and the rules don't always apply either. But back in Surrey, they're more police procedural, and I want it to be genuinely a whole team that do the investigations. And so you can't have a whole load of people in the team who all have all the skill sets and all can do everything. They need the backstory or personality traits that makes them not perfect, because none of us are. And they need the complementing and contrasting skill sets in order for the team to be able to solve these crimes and work together to do it. Stock by name, but not by nature. She was tiny in build, spiky hair, bright patterned clothes. She should have looked a mess with what she wore, but she never did. Her sharp features matched her mind, and her sharp tongue meant she either made enemies within the team, but more usually endeared them to her, defeminising her and making her one of the boys. Goodwin liked that about her. Despite her attractive qualities and features, she slipped into being one of the boys easily. That didn't mean she was not respected as a woman, because none of them ever forgot that. Just the difference in her sex never became a problem with her. I can't say that I'm not slightly influenced by Penelope Garcia in Criminal Minds. I'm not. Penny Stock is nothing like her, but maybe there is a trait. Maybe, computers and analysis, it's all ones and zeros. It's all very black and white, and I've seen other very technical computer-based analysts who deal in stats and black and white, ones and zeros, numbers, that whole sort of accountancy, dark suit, boring sort of ethos they give off, that I wanted my tech and several of the real deep computer people that I have known are quirky, And whilst they often hide behind a computer screen or behind a keyboard, not that they're hiding, but that is their outlet to communicate with the world in a lot of cases. They're comfortable in code. They're comfortable in the stats and the numbers and the tech speak, computer speak. And that comfort often can make them seem quite withdrawn and hiding and shy, reserved. But when they're in their safe place, their element, when they're talking about computers or about statistics, and quite often in the real world, they are less black and white, grey suited level. And so whilst Penelope Garcia in Criminal Minds is similar in that sense, she is not unique. I've had worked with technical people in the past who are very different in visual appearance and quite loud and out there, despite their jobs being quite contained in that square and keyboard. So Penny's not dissimilar in that sense, and so she brings to the team very much that computer access, and she, in this current world, you can't avoid that. You wouldn't be able to do an awful lot, and particularly not investigate a crime, without that computer skill set. Yes, like Goodwin talks a lot, particularly in A Lower Goodbye, about at the end of the day, a lot of the crimes are committed in person, particularly murder, and so he prefers to stay in person, not behind the screen of a computer. Sadly, the world is moving more towards even being able to commit murder over the internet or through the computer, but he is right still that these crimes happen in real life. They're not virtual, but it's getting harder and harder to solve them without the virtual. It comes into our lives all the time, whether it's smartwatches or mobile phone devices, tracking, AirTags, all sorts of things enhance their ability to solve crimes, because all of these things are tracked. And it started with CCTV, but now that's everywhere. We've all got them at, Ring doorbells, things like that. They all give a digital map of people's movements, or even thoughts and processes with AI now, and with your smart home devices. They all build up a digital footprint of all of us, which one can help investigations, but also hinder, because there's so much data, and it's wheedling out the data that is useful and can help an investigation, and the data that can't. So Goodwin had worked with Penny before, and other people in the team had. So let me pick up here. So Goodwin's working with with Niels to set up the incident room at the start of Connecting Trains. So they had worked mainly in silence, apart from what sounded like 2 phone calls for Niels from his wife, or only talked about the case as they approached 2 p.m. Goodwin had chosen the first briefing and bringing together of the team to be in 30 minutes, and he wasn't surprised to see no one other than Niels so far. Those on the team who had not worked with him before would arrive at the time required. Steve Payne would not voluntarily turn up earlier if he thought he might have to do something. Goodwin was just thinking that Penny would be early. She would want to know all was well with the computer before the meeting, when she delicately came through the door. "Good afternoon, D.I. Goodwin. It's good to see you again and to work with you too." She put out her hand to him. "It's good to have you on board, Penny. You here to check out the IT stuff is working?" She smiled at him and turned to eye the computer on the table beneath the maps. "You know me, sir. Need to get connected up." Goodwin laughed and turned back to what he was doing when Penny spoke again, softly. "I was sorry to hear about your wife, sir." Goodwin turned back to her. "Thanks, Penny. This is Paul Niels. We worked together on the Farnham rape case. Paul, this is Penny Stock, mathematical whiz. We have worked together on a few things." They started talking, and Goodwin could go back to his whiteboard. So Goodwin, like I say, had worked with her before. Let me see if I can find some other bits where you can get some insight into Penny. So if you remember to last week when we talked about Payne and he was given that new job to talk to all the DIUs, in that same briefing Goodwin moves on. Next one. Goodwin thought for a second, then looking up at Penny. "Penny, let's get those fingers tapping on the train link. Find me a link using the time slots we have, of which we know there are 3 are dead accurate. What train would they have taken them away again? What one might they have got to the locations? Is it always the same train? Where do they get on? Do they always leave at the same time? See if with that analytical mind of yours you can come up with a starting station, a certain train they always use to do these crimes, something, anything." "I'm on it." Penny nodded, turning to her computer screen and flexing her fingers before tapping furiously away. "Anyone has any other possible patterns or links with the crimes or trains, then talk to Penny. She is a whiz with patterns and links. Just give her the gist and she'll find if it's there." Goodwin could feel the tension mixed with excitement starting to build in the room. It was the feeling that solved crimes. So you can see there that the dynamics are already starting to work together, and each team member adds their bit, and while they're all starting to add their bit and it's starting to move, it buoys the whole team, so they all enjoy that. So there is a key bit in Connecting Trains where the whole train thing becomes really important, and so I'm going to read you a little bit where you get the idea of Penny knowing her stuff and the rest of the team not having a clue and relying on her. So this is in chapter 10. "Give me something good, Penny," asked Goodwin. "I'm still doing the analysis, but preliminary results suggest that I will be able to come up with at least one starting station, outbound train, and an inbound train. I've been out and measured the time to walk from the stations to each of the scenes at a slow, medium and fast pace. So I'm looking at the times of trains on the Guildford via Woking to Waterloo line that could have got the burglars to the houses. to coincide with the definite time slots we have at 3 of the crimes and average time slots for the other 2. I'm using the timetabled times as well as the times the trains actually left on those dates. I will see whether any or all of the stations could be the starting points. I will also see if one or more trains could be the one they use. There are a lot of combinations, sir, and it's going to take some time, but I hope to have a report for you by tomorrow if that's okay. Penny turning away from her screen to several blank stares from some of the team and confusion on some others. She sighed. Great, Penny. Sounds good. We'll look forward to the results tomorrow. That's fine. Penny sighed again and returned to her screen with a look that said she didn't understand why everyone found this so hard, which is a standard look for people who get the maths, get the tech. This is quite simplistic. When I wrote Connecting Trains, that was 22 years ago, and IT wasn't anywhere near what it is now with regards to that. The IT bit gets a bit more complicated in A Lower Goodbye, as that's more up to date. And although I wrote it then, it doesn't take away from it. And in Goodwin's life timeline, it's only a couple of years ago. The next day, Penny is going to do her presentation. And they talk a little bit around other things. She picks up something that Angela said. Did you check whether he was in classes either side of 12 and 2 p.m. on the day of the crimes? Asked Penny. Goodwin was interested to see Penny, analyst and computer nerd, questioning Angela, the action girl. That's because in this respect, it's data, it's analysis, it's Penny's thing. So whilst Angela is very competent and confident and in the thick of it and very ambitious, that doesn't mean to say that Penny isn't. And Penny, when it's her thing, can be very forthright with her. As again, then they continue talking about it, and Penny says, I don't think he's our man, stated Penny. Everyone in the room turned to look at Penny. With the conviction in her voice, they wanted to know how she was so sure. How so, Penny? Asked Goodwin. Well, I have finished the analysis. I can run you through it now if you like, replied Penny. Let's hear it, said Goodwin, eager to see her output. Penny handed round some sheets with a series of starting stations, train times, calculations and destinations. The sheets were colour-coded so that several final times were shaded out in red. The sheets were delivered with a report, which Penny turned to first. If you could all look through the first sheet in the report first, I would like to run through my assumptions. I want to do this so you can all understand what basis this work was done on and challenge my assumptions if A. they don't fit the evidence we have, or B. you don't think they are valid. Obviously shout if you feel I've missed any assumptions too. She looked around the tops of everyone's heads as they were bent over the sheet she had distributed. Go ahead, Penny, Goodwin encouraged. So in my head, I can see this happening, and she is, totally in her domain. So, and she doesn't expect anybody to challenge it or to tell her that she's missed any, because this is her thing and she's very exact and detailed, and it's maths and it's stats and it has to be. And that's where she comes out as being the not her dress and her spiky hair and her sharp features, the whole character thing around that is all very reflective of how she is when she's in her knowledge space when she is doing the stats and the analysis and all of that, the computer stuff. I say computer stuff more for those who don't know computers as much. She does go on then, but it potentially gives away a little too much of the story. So I'm going to leave it there for Penny for this week, and hopefully that gives you an insight. And now we've looked at Niels, who's like Goodwin's right-hand man, and he's got a lot going on at home at the moment, which is impacting how he's working. And then we've got Payne, who brings connections and negativity to the team. And we've got Penny, who brings the data analysis, computer nerdish, but outspoken and colourful, small package to the team. So next week I'm going to pick up all of the others that grow through connecting trains rather than are described up front, because Goodwin's worked with them before. But I want to introduce you to them because Connecting Trains is the first one with the team. Lethal Leith Hill is the next one, but when we get to that, you'll find that sort of is more like the international ones. It's the experience at the time that relates to mine, the story behind the story of Leith Hill, rather than necessarily building the team, because the same team come back in that. So the next 1 or 2 episodes of this one will be the other characters in the team and how they grow through Connecting Trains, to set up for future Surrey based stories, but also so that you understand the dynamics and the experience that I've had working in IT, Penny, and managing teams, Goodwin, working with people like Payne, and then when we touch on Horton and Angela Phillips, the aspects of me that are in them, which is the experience that I bring to my writing, so that it feels authentic. It feels like a team that would genuinely exist and solve crimes. And so I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening.